Hey, it's JT here from Active Management, and I've been lucky enough to be a guest on the Fitness Business Podcast several times over the last 2 years. So yeah, it's happy birthday to you, Chantel, on the Fitness Business Podcast. 2 years. That makes you about 1 year and 9 months longer than the average podcast. So congratulations. That's amazing. It truly is an international show. You have some amazing guests and you are doing a fantastic job as the host. Congratulations, Fitness Business Podcast, on your second birthday. Active Management are proud to be the premier sponsor of the Fitness Business Podcast. For the FBP family, this week we have a free download for you to work on your business, not in your business. To get your hustle mode on in 2017, go to fitnessbusinesspodcast.com/active.
Welcome back to another week of the Fitness Business Podcast. This week, our special guest is Lisa Simone Richards from Vitality PR. And during the show, we chat about how to make yourself stand out in a crowded fitness market. We learn about the term copy stalking and how you can use it to speak your client's language. And Lisa Simone Richards tells us about a great way that we can succinctly communicate what we do when speaking with our ideal customer. Before we get started, I want to say a big thank you, because as I record this today, we have just hit over 9,000 downloads just for the month of May, which makes it our biggest month ever, and it takes us to over 105,000 downloads in total. So I just wanted to say I am so grateful to all of you who are listening and sharing the show, and so appreciative for our amazing guests who give up their time to share their expertise so that we can all become better fitness business professionals. So huge high fives and hugs from me to every single one of you out there. MyZone, the wearable technology partner that enhances paid programming and drives customer engagement. Learn more at myzone.org. Lisa Simone Richards is a visibility strategist for health, fitness, and wellness entrepreneurs who want to go from unknown and underpaid to standing out and selling out. She first joined us on show 58 when she talked about how to get your fitness brand in the media. I am a huge fan of Lisa Simone, and as you'll hear, she is a bundle of energy and an absolute expert when it comes to getting your brand seen, standing out, and communicating your message. Make sure you listen closely to what she has to say about niching down and not being afraid to eliminate some people as potential customers. Because as scary as it might sound, I really encourage you to think about how that message applies to your own business. Let's dive into the interview. A very warm welcome back to the show, Lisa Simone.
Hey, Chantel, thank you so much for having me back. I'm so excited to connect with you and your listeners again. I had so much fun the first time that, second time maybe is the charm.
It definitely is. Now, I know for a fact that you have got a lot on your plate, and I know how organized you are. So I'm hoping we might be able to start today with maybe a few of your secrets and tell us about any apps, systems, or rituals that you're currently using to stay focused and stay on top of your workload.
So I live and die by my Google Calendar. If it's not in there, it's not real. So that's definitely something that helps me stay on top of things. And in addition to the digital apps, I'm actually kind of going old school. I have been taking it with my accountability partners. So I have one or two in all the different masterminds and business programs that I'm a part of. And we do such a good job of checking in with one another. And, if one person is, zooming ahead, you can't help but feel that fire under your butt to want to stay on top of everything with them. So a little bit of digital and a little bit of in person.
I think that's great. You know what? It's interesting because as many apps or systems that our guests share with us, I seem to nowadays be getting equal number of people coming back to basics and saying, checking in with a mentor or checking in with a colleague or grabbing a pen and paper and writing stuff down. It's funny how everything comes back around, doesn't it?
It really does. And, when you talk about writing things with a pen and paper, I happen to be a notebook junkie. Like if I write 2 pages in a notebook, I'm off to the bookstore to buy a brand new one that's fresh and crisp. So I always have a favorite notebook handy. I invested in a super pretty sparkly pen that I love, and it always encourages me to write things down. And I think there's really something to be said about that connection when you do it manually. So it makes it a real treat for me.
Oh, I completely agree. Now, as I mentioned earlier, you first joined us and we talked about how to get your fitness brand in the media. And as we all know, the fitness industry is such a crowded and competitive space. So what I'm hoping we can start off with today is maybe you can help us find out a way that we can best describe ourselves in a way that really separates us from that crowd.
Yeah, so Chantal, I think it's really important to be able to communicate what you do in a way that makes you stand out from everyone else. So, speaking specifically to the listeners of the Fitness Business Podcast, I'm going to guess a lot of them own studios or a lot of them are personal trainers. And if you go up to a prospective client and you're just like, hey, I'm a personal trainer, that's great. You sound like 1,000 other people. But actually at a conference I was at recently, I met a personal trainer who is the person I want to work with. She told me that she's a personal trainer who specializes in working with marathoners who are working on cutting their run time down by 15 minutes. And when I heard that, I didn't even care what her price was. I knew that she had my specific goal in mind and that there wasn't anybody else that I would want to work with. So really being able to be confident in niching down and saying the clear transformation that you offer, and honestly, not being afraid to eliminate some people as potential customers is a great way to really stand out in your space and magnetize that ideal client right to you.
It's amazing how specific you can actually get. Like when you just gave that example of people that want to decrease their runtime by 15 minutes. I mean, that is so specific, isn't it? I'm sure that you would come across clients of yours all the time that do have that fear of getting that specific with their niche. So in that example or in those times, what do you do with them to convince them that, in actual fact, it's going to be beneficial to be super, super specific about your target?
Well, the first thing that I do is really encourage them to look at their mindset. So there are two ways that you can approach how you look at something, and that's either with a scarcity mindset or with an abundance mindset. So if you're from that scarcity perspective, you're like, there aren't enough clients, there isn't enough money, I have to appeal to anyone with a pulse and a wallet so that people will work with me. That's really operating out of fear. But if you have an abundance mindset, then you're going to be really operating out of love. You're going to be able to communicate what you do with that smaller niche market and not have that fear of not serving enough people. I mean, I don't have the stats in front of me, but let's hang on to that example of a marathon runner. If you look up how many people are running marathons across the globe and you're an online trainer, even if you're a personal trainer, like if you just worked in Boston with offline clients in person, think about how many people would fill your roster. So the key is to really find one ideal type of client and work to bring more of them on board with you. And something else I share with my clients is it makes a lot of sense from an efficiency standpoint. Like, let's say, again, that you're working with marathoners specifically. You don't necessarily need to be writing a training plan over and over and over again because there are going to be a lot of consistencies with people who want to achieve a very specific speed work goal.
You know what, Lisa Simone, I feel as though this conversation around targeting our ideal client, getting very specific around our ideal client is actually the perfect segue to our next question, because it's all around client connection, and really we know that client connection is absolutely essential part of growing and sustaining a successful fitness business. So perhaps you can expand on what we've just talked about and give us some tips around how we can actually go about speaking our clients' language so that they have that attraction to us.
So this is something that I love to talk about, and I'm going to have to give credit to where credit is due. So I learned about this from a woman named Mariah Cause, who teaches a course about launching online courses. And something that I learned from her is called copy stalking. And what that's all about is go into the Facebook group that your ideal client is hanging out in. I think a lot of the time as entrepreneurs and as marketers, we want to use high-level jargon and industry terms to really showcase the knowledge that we have. But our ideal client, that's not what they're typing into Google. That's not what they're looking for on your sales page. So if you do something called copy stalking and then you check out those Facebook groups that your ideal client is, look for the specific language that they're using, and then copy that exact language and use it on your sales page, use it on your marketing materials, put it in your emails. Because that way, when your client is reading it, they're going to think, oh my God, Chantel is literally in my head. How is she thinking exactly what I'm thinking? And that's going to help create that connection that makes them want to work with you. It shows a really clear understanding that you know what their problems are and how to be the solution to overcoming them.
Okay, so let's say, for example, our ideal customer was a new mum, for example. Are you suggesting what we should do is go onto a Facebook page for like a new mum forum?
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. So, okay, there's one thing I'm going to clarify first. I think anytime you're going into a Facebook group to do marketing, which is a really, really smart strategy, number one, be respectful of the group owner and the members of the group. If you go in there like spewing off a bunch of marketing messages and promoting yourself, that's not really going to add value, and it actually positions you in a really negative light. What I like to do when I'm checking out my ideal clients in Facebook groups is I just like to sit there and listen. I pay attention to the conversations. I read about what they're asking about, what their struggles are. And all I want to do is be of value. If I know a resource that can help them, if I know a person that they can connect with, I will jump in the conversation and share that information. I will not say a single word about who I am or what I do or try and push a product. There have been instances where people in the group are asking questions that are entirely related to maybe a lead magnet that I have available. So I'll say, hey, Jane Doe, I actually have something like that. If you're interested in getting the information, feel free to send me a private message. And then what I've seen happen is not only will say Jane Doe send me a private message, but a lot of other people on the thread would comment, I'd like to get access to that too. I'd love to get access to it as well. And then that way you're actually inviting pursuit as opposed to chasing people and pushing things on people. So they've asked to be a part of it, and now you're giving that solution. So it's all about really delivering value. And actually, one thing I'd also share is the last time that I did that, going into a group, just giving advice, being helpful, sharing resources, it actually prompted me to connect with the owner of the group. She saw how much value I was delivering. And then later on, she interviewed me on her blog. So it's a really good way to actually start creating connections. So number one, just be of service, give. And through giving, you will actually receive as well.
Just a quick breakaway from the interview for a second. I think that copy stalking sounds like a fantastic way to understand our customers' language and to connect with them in a really subtle way. But I also think it's important that we think about how that communication or how that connection eventually fits into lead generation. So I asked Lisa Simone to expand a little bit on how we can continue the prospect journey from that point on.
So I think it's really helpful in terms of acquiring leads. So let's say you go into a Facebook group and you offer them access to one of your lead magnets. Mm-hmm. That invites them to be on your email list. And then hopefully, you're doing something like inviting them to join your private Facebook group. Mm-hmm. And then when you're doing a Facebook live video, for example, within your group, something that I like to do is deliver value. And I also do a little bit of seeding. If I'm talking about how to get on television, I'll talk about some steps, find the right producer, think about your lead time. And actually, one time when I worked with my client, Michelle Scarlett, who's a personal trainer, when we got her to be a regularly featured expert on this TV show, this is what we did. And if you want to learn more about that, feel free to shoot me a private message. And that's another way to very cleverly, get people into your community and again, have them asking you about how they can take things further with you as opposed to that overt sale.
Oh, I love that. So sharing an example of someone that they can relate to.
Yeah, definitely doing some seeding is a really good way to show your success stories and inspire other people to want to become your next success story.
Now, continuing on our topic of communication and thinking about within our own businesses, whether we be a studio owner or if it's a PT, and the fitness packages that we offer at our facilities or within our business, do you think that you can give us some advice around how we can really succinctly and effectively communicate our offers to our ideal customer?
Yes, I definitely can. And this is another, I'm really big on giving credit where it's deserved. So this is another example that I want to give credit to someone named Trevor Crane on. He's an author, and he actually has a really great book on how to get high paying clients for life, which I'm sure a lot of the listeners would love to do. So I had the opportunity to interview him recently for a summit that I did, and he introduced me to something called an audio logo. So I'll say it verbally what it is, and then maybe in the show notes, we can include a link to a blog post that I did where you can actually get access to a PDF version of this form. So what your audio logo says is, typically I work with blank, you fill in the types of clients, who have the problem of blank, so whatever challenges they're experiencing, to help them get the result of blank. So one more time, typically I work with blank who have the problem of blank to get the results of blank. So that's a really quick way you can share with a client, this is what I do, these are the problems that they have, and this is how I solve them for them. I think that's a really, modern take on the elevator pitch that really succinctly communicates this is a transformation that I offer. This is something you can easily use in conversation. You can use it in written copy. I think it could do really well maybe on a home page or an about page. Actually, really especially well in an about page. But something that was super interesting is I was recently in San Diego, California for an event that was all about how to speak on stage and do presentations. And one of the exercises we had to do is go around to introduce ourselves to people and ask what they did. And I would say maybe 7 out of 10 times when you ask someone what they did, they would laugh because they felt a little bit nervous that they had such a convoluted answer. And when people came to me, they're like, what do you do? I was like, I work with health and fitness wellness entrepreneurs to go from unknown and underpaid to standing out and selling out. People were like, oh, well, I know exactly what you do. That was really succinct. There weren't any questions.
Yeah.
So something like that can really help you present with confidence and inspire confidence in the people who are looking at investing with you. Because, let's say you were going to go hire a financial planner. If I went to a financial planner and was like, hey, what do you do? And they kind of laugh and they're like, well, I do mutual funds and RRSPs and 401ks and and they just seem kind of all over the place with it. There's no way I would give them access to my money. So, I think we have to keep that in mind as fitness professionals as well, so that people will trust us with their bodies, the one body that they have. I think as fitness professionals and entrepreneurs in general, we are so passionate about what we do, and we want to share all the details and tell everybody about all the great stuff that we're accomplishing. But we also have to remember that we're all guilty of this, myself included. We like to talk about ourselves too much and people get bored and they tune out. So this is a really good way to make it quick, make it fast, easy to digest, so that people really get the gist of it before they tune out and they start kind of looking at you with those glazed over eyes. And they're like, oh yeah, you do that and that, while they're creating a grocery list in their head,
I absolutely understand. So, Lisa Simone, that was such fantastic information that you've shared with us today. Thank you so much. Now, as I mentioned at the very top of the show, I know how busy you are. Do you want to maybe just share with us a little bit of an insight of some of the things that you have been working on in your business in 2017?
Yeah, definitely. I'd say the biggest thing I've been transitioning with in 2017 is launching my new website and really empowering health, fitness, and wellness entrepreneurs to take their visibility and their PR into their own hands. So something that I'm offering to help people learn how to get in front of the audiences of others is actually teaching them how to pitch to get on podcasts. So I've recently launched on lisasimonerichards.com my free 5-day pitch to podcast challenge. And what that does is really teach people exactly how to find the perfect podcast that their ideal client is listening to, learn how to pitch them successfully so that they can get featured on a podcast and do an incredible job, even how to overcome any objections just in case they don't get accepted the first time or if they don't even hear back from someone. So really, I'm showing people how to get featured on podcasts just like this one.
Well, that is right up our alley, isn't it? That's so cool. So in other words, if there's a gym owner out there that perhaps knows that their target market is, let's go back to our new mum example, if they know that their target market is hanging out listening to a podcast which is helping out new mums in the first 6 to 12 months, say, of getting used to having bub, then you would help them with your pitch to podcast, potentially get on and maybe give some health tips or some fitness tips of how to get back into being active after bub?
Exactly. I teach them how to go through the iTunes store, how to go through Stitcher Radio, even how to use Google to find what exactly these podcasts are. And I share my personal 3-step listening process so that they can really get a good handle on this show's format so that they can successfully find, follow, engage, and pitch the podcast and, get heard by their ideal client. And in that way, they get really seen as an expert and a leading authority in their ideal client size.
That is very, very cool. Well, we'll make sure that we grab that link from you. So if anyone does want to check it out, Lisa Simone's Pitch to Podcast course, then we'll put the link in today's show notes. Lisa Simone, thank you so much. Before we finish today's interview, I asked Lisa Simone to leave us with her top 3 tips to grow and succeed in business over the next 12 months. Tribe, if you haven't explored a functional training space for your gym, then now is the time. With Queenex Functional Training by Precor, there is a unit to fit every space. Plus, education is included to ensure that training is delivered with confidence. You need to jump online and check this out right now. Go to precor.com/fitness business podcast.
I would say my number 1 tip is to niche down. Do not be afraid to work with a specific subset of the population. We went into that in a little bit of detail, and that is a really great way for you to get known as a big fish in a little pond. So that would be my number 1 tip. My number 2 tip is to go deep. I think a lot of the time we have so much knowledge and we want to just communicate everything that we know that we're giving people a really surface level of how, but we're not giving them the in-depth steps that they need to succeed. So, pick one niche area that you're super familiar with and just give away all the details that you can to that so people can see the full value of what you have to offer, and they can actually see something from start to finish. And that's going to make them feel accomplished. And once they get that kind of a win, they're going to want to work with you further. And then I would say my number 3 tip that we also touched in during our conversation is to invest in yourself. I mean, just speaking for myself personally and candidly and vulnerably, when I invested in my coach this year and she told me the price, my eyes bugged out of my head like a cartoon. It was half my rent in a whole nother currency. So it was a scary leap to make. But having worked with her, thinking about where I was this time last year versus where I am now is such a profound difference. And I know the massive shifts that it's going to make in my business. So again, I think it's so important to surround yourself with people who know more than you, as well as a community of people who are going to support you and elevate you. Chantel, are you familiar with that saying that you're the equivalent of the 5 people you spend the most time with?
I am. I've heard that one.
So when you're working with people who are all up-leveling, there's no choice for you to do anything other than up-level yourself. So I think be willing to make those investments in yourself, and they will absolutely pay off as long as you're willing to do the work.
And you know what, Lisa Simone, it doesn't astound me. It kind of seems to be such a common piece of advice that I hear from so many of our amazing leaders in our industry, and that is how important it is to work with someone, as you have suggested, that can be a mentor, that can be a role model, that can lift you up, that can guide you, and that can support you in achieving the goals that you want to achieve within your career.
Yeah, it's absolutely imperative. I mean, the whole point of us working with our clients is, they can get all the information they need on personal training and squats and lunges and all that stuff from Google. They can find the information for free. But when they work with us, the whole point is that we're going to take them further, faster. And that's the same thing with investing in yourself. Sure, you can Google the different ways to, create a lead magnet, do Facebook ads, and scale your business. But when you really make that investment, both in time, financial commitment, et cetera, what you're doing is skipping bounds ahead further and going faster. So, the same thing that we're offering our clients, we need to do for ourselves.
That is a great note to finish on. Lisa Simone, thank you so much for joining us once again on the Fitness Business Podcast.
I am so always happy to spend some time chatting with you and engaging with this amazing community. So thank you again for having me.
Precor Quickfire 5.
Now, we could not celebrate the second birthday of the Fitness Business Podcast without a guest appearance from none other than JT from Active Management. Welcome back to the show, JT.
Thank you, Chantal. It's a pleasure to be here.
It is great to have you back. We're very excited to be celebrating our second birthday, and you've been such a huge part of the show over the last couple of years. Are there any kind of highlights or memories for you over the last 106 shows to date?
Memories. So the highlight for me has been in the last 3 or 4 months where the Fitness Business Podcast, from inside looking out, has really branched internationally. Mm-hmm. You know, seeing and hearing people from all over the world say that they listen to the show it's a bit of a buzz. Mm. You know, I think we started where it was just a thing that we ran in Australia. And I think respectfully, even you didn't even think it would get international. And now, we have listeners in Germany and all over the US and UK. It's pretty cool.
Ireland. I found out this week, which is pretty cool as well.
Yeah, so that's my highlight.
Okay, that's a good highlight. So, JT, you know we start the show now with our pre-call quick fire 5 questions. Are you ready?
Oh, yeah.
That's more like it. Tell everyone, why do you do what you do?
To reduce the healthcare costs in every country across the globe.
And what is the best piece of advice that you have ever received?
Look, I don't know if it's ever, but it's something that's relevant for me in my business at the moment, and that is embrace eventually in business, courtesy of Jay Bear.
Embrace eventually in business. I like it. And what's a personal habit that helps you become better at what you do?
Pump an iron first thing in the morning.
I concur. That's a good way to start the day. And what's one book, podcast, or blog that you would recommend and why?
The Fitness Business Podcast.
Thank you. Right answer.
Books. Sorry, book or books?
Oh, you can go plural.
Good to Great by Jim Collins, 5 Dysfunctions of a Team by Patrick Lencioni, People by You by Jeb Blunt, Scaling Up by Vern Harnish, Start With Why by Simon Sinek.
Wow. Nice list. I like it. And what will our listeners learn when they come back and listen to next week's show?
Using a metaphor, what you do in your locker room will impact what happens on the field.
I cannot
bit cryptic,
wait.
Isn't it?
It's a little bit cryptic, but I cannot wait to hear what you've got to tell us next week.
Get your ears back next week.
JT, thank you so much for joining us for the pre-call Quick Fire 5, and we will see you for next week's show. That interview with JT is coming up in next week's show. Until then, thank you for joining us for another week of the Fitness Business Podcast. And remember, what you leave behind is not what's engraved in stone monuments, but what is woven into the lives of others.
Hi, it's Allison Flatley, and I was a guest on the Fitness Business Podcast where I shared some tips on leadership. I want to wish the Fitness Business Podcast a very happy second birthday. You guys do an amazing job helping the fitness industry become stronger and the people in it great leaders. Keep up the great work.
Great show this week that you should be suffering DOMs, delayed onset mind soreness, as you are overloaded and that's when your mind is strengthened. You and your business have been strengthened thanks to the amazing support of our premier sponsor, Active Management. Check out www.activemgmt.com.au only if you want to strengthen your business and your leadership. Don't forget all today's links and notes are found at www.fitnessbusinesspodcast.com, where you can also subscribe and never miss a show and maybe win a prize. Next week is another incredible guest with Chantal, so get ready for more Fit Bizpiration.